This is the first image from yesterday's shoot, and thanks to Lyle for sending me these in, and Dylan for modelling for them. So this is the first one. I've already made a few adjustments just to the image, nothing else, just to try and balance out the light. And in Photoshop already, I have my background open. I haven't scaled this up or anything, so it's just to let you know that I haven't changed a thing. This is still RGB 8-bit. And when I go in here, I'll show you what happens in here once I take this into Photoshop. For the next videos in this series, the edits and everything will be done, and taking it into Photoshop will already be done, so you don't have to watch that. So what I'm going to do now is right click here, edit in Photoshop, and this time I'm going to open it as a smart object in Photoshop. And that's it as a smart object in Photoshop. Right, you'll see there that indicates a smart object. And along the way, I'll explain why we've opened it as a smart object. You'll also notice that it's 16-bit, dropping it into an 8-bit image. So we're going to lose a wee bit of information there. So what you can do if you want, and this won't upscale an image in any way at all, but what you can do if you want, is you can go into the Adobe stock image, 8-bit, go into image mode and change it to a 16-bit channel. And that's it, it's changed. You're not getting any extra information, it's just if it makes you feel comfortable doing it. So what I'm going to do with this in here is I'm going to drag this into this image and drop it. So as you can see there, it's still a smart object, but it's massive. So we have to scale it down. So I'm going to select it and then Control T. And I get the chance to scale this down. Right. For this image here, I am going to look about that size and that. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And that way you can see that's actually worked out quite well for the branch, but it's not that we're after. It's actually Dylan that we're after. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a bit. And then this is quite a nice balance. So let's see what happens when we separate this. If we're going to select, and we go select subject, let's see what it does here. And I'm editing this, you will see this entire video as it is. So I'm not going to change anything. So whatever time it takes to run, that's how long it takes to run. So we've selected down there. We're still a smart object here. I'll just make these a wee bit bigger so that you can see them. And then I'm going to mask this. So there you go. That's him dropped into it. Has it worked well? This is when you decide if you like the angle that the person's standing at. I'm going to zoom back. Then you decide, is he coming into the scene? Is he walking through the scene? I can still scale him. So I'm going to leave him there just now. And that's him in the scene. If we zoom in, it's actually made a really good selection around him. So that's how quick it is. If you see bits that you're not happy with, perhaps a slight white there or that under there or this here, in fact, what you can do is zoom in. So I'm zoomed in at 490%. I have a mask, and it's a reveal all mask when you can see it in there. So I'm now going to paint in black. Change this to black. And when I'm doing masks, 9 times out of 10, I'll use the general brushes, the soft round, and I'm just going to paint this in. And I'm going to be as accurate as I can. Now you can see some colour casting there just now from that with the purple, the fringing, sorry. But you also notice that I've lost the front of his shoe. Do you see that when the cutout happened? So the cutout's really good, but it's not brilliant. So I'm just going to change the brush to white, and if I press X on my keyboard, and just paint it back in. Now I'm always painting more than I need to see so that I can then zoom in a bit, and we're now pixel editing. And the simple reason we're pixel editing is because the image backplate that I dropped this into is rather small. So I'm now going to change to black in my brush, and I am going to paint that back out. So it is not going to be perfect for this, but this is just to show you how to cut it out. The rest of the videos as well, you will see them basically live. So if anything goes wrong, I can show you how to correct it. I'm now going to press Command and 0 or Control and 0. So we've got Dylan in here. We also need a shadow. Okay, so we need a shadow coming from him. So that layer there, I'm going to copy up Control and J. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this here. And you'll notice that it says blending options, select pixels and everything. If I click in the grey, I have the option of rasterize layer. I'm going to rasterize the layer. So that is no longer a smart object. This one is. But this one is going to be the shadow. So I'm just renaming it so that you can see it. And actually the shadow I will colour in violet. Okay. So that's just the label so that you know. And then I'm going to move that below this layer here. I'm also going to apply the mask to it. So if I go right click on the mask this time and then apply layer mask, if I turn everything off, that's Dylan there. I won't move him, but that's him there as a cut out. So if you ever need to cut something out, that's one of the ways of doing it as well. But what I'm going to do is he's going to become the shadow here. You've got to think about where the light is, how you set the light up. And the best way to do this if you're using a backplate is look in your image to see where the shadows are. Now the shadows are not heavy in this. And the light is quite high, so the shadow is going to be short. So what you do, click the shadow layer. And this is destructive. Go into Image, Adjustments, and just go down to Exposure. And I'm going to turn the exposure down. Now you won't see a difference. Going to click OK. No difference can be seen until I turn the layer off. So we're actually going to use the photograph of Dylan as the shadow as well. I'm going to zoom out a little further here, not too much, and I'm going to move the screen up so that you can see this. I'm going to select the shadow and I'm going to look and try and follow where the shadows are coming from. And it's quite difficult with this image to see. So you know, at least you know now how to do it in the rest of the images. But what I'm going to do is go Control T. And I've got control of this now. But I need extra control of it. And you notice my mouse is going white. So if I just drag this up and down, that happens. It scales it. Control Z takes it back there. And if I drag it right and left, I can scale it up. So we get that kind of shadow. Control Z. If I hold down Control in my keyboard, now that I think is Option or it'll be Command in a Mac. I've now got control of this shadow and I'll show you what I mean. If I take the top one, I can rotate this right round. Okay. Now there's a couple of things to do here. If I take that to there, does it look right? No. So I'm going to move it back to there. Does that look a bit better? Yeah, we might get away with it. Do we want the shadow to the side of them? In this instance, no, we don't. We want it behind them. I still have control selected, so I'm going to move that foot up there. Yes, you wouldn't get that kind of idea there, and would that one be coming back the way? More than likely. So we then kind of just adjust it around like that, just to get what's best for your image. There's a few ways it will take to get that, and a few times it will take to get that. So I'm going to go for that there, just for this image, and I'm going to click OK. Another thing that I'm going to do is, this is Photoshop 24, I think this one is. It's not the 25 version. But I'm going to move this up to the top, take those arrows and pin it up there. I just find it easier to work with up there. So if we zoom into this shadow, it looks terrible, and we've got bits over here and bits here. This is the one time I'm not going to mask anything. I'm actually just going to use the eraser. So I'm going to go in, choose the eraser and make sure it's a soft edge eraser. And I'm just going to erase bits of this. So I'm just going to shape it slightly. Right? Would it be as much of a shadow as that? I don't know. I would use a reference image to do that. But that, I don't need. That to me looks a wee bit weird. So what I would do then is I would use the lasso tool, copy, draw around that, not copy it, draw around that, and then I would go Command T or Control and T. And again, using Control, I would drag it to where I want it. Perhaps like that. You'll find what suits you best with your images. So there's that done now. And deselect. And then I have a wee bit there to erase. So I'm just going to go in there and go E. So E for eraser. Now, the shadow won't be hard. It's a soft diffused image. Simplest way to do it, if you want to be safe, copy it up one layer and go J, and then turn this background shadow off, the one that we've already highlighted. Go to your shadow copy, go filter, blur, and then go for a Gaussian blur in this, right? You won't see much of a difference just now until you start dragging it up. So you're looking to try and match areas in this, and it is quite difficult. We're also going to turn the opacity down. I might get away with that. I'll just leave it as that to do that. And now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to bring the opacity down. Okay, so that we get that. So you're now seeing, even in the areas in here where it's shadow, you can still see the texture of the ground coming through. Now, when you have a light source, and especially this kind of light source, there are multiple shadows. How you do this is basically to deepen the shadow. The one that you're happy with, copy it up, which is Control J, so you see that'll thicken back in again. Now, anything close to a surface has a heavier, where a surface connects, has a heavier shadow, a deeper shadow. So I'm just going to do this with the eraser tool just for time. Normally you would do it with a masking tool so that if you go back to change it again. So I can erase this just in areas like that, right? There'd be quite a heavy shadow in here. So that any contact points have a deeper shadow in them. So if I zoom that out, Command and 0, and I turn both of these off. So there's the heavy one. So you may even like that, but it's just the way things work. Closer a surface, when a surface connects, there's a heavier shadow. Or you might like that one. And if you do it with a mask, you can go in and change that. I can also go back, that's at 78%. I can go up there and I can deepen it if I want, or I can bring it back further. Whatever suits you. We're only looking at methods, we're not looking at finished images. So that's what we have so far. We are nearly done with this image, and it is the quick way of doing this for you. Go back down to your background layer and Control J. Copy that up. Take that to the top. So we are now covering the image. In here, go to Filter, Blur, and choose Average. We now have this green. Now, what we can do, remember we're going to be working with normal, opacity, and perhaps fill with this one as well. So if I go into darken, nope, doesn't work. Multiply, it's okay. It might be multiply though. Colour burn, no. Remember, these are the darker ones, the lighter ones, and then we get into overlay. So you now see that we're beginning to get a type of blend coming in here. But this is blending the entire image. We just want to blend it into Dylan to try and make them match up. It just depends on the final effect you're going for. And you'll get through these 2 or 3 different times. But luckily, because it's on a layer, you've got the option of doing this. So I actually quite liked multiply. So before I do anything else, I can change these at any point. If you hold down Alt or Option on your keyboard, if it's working, there it is. And on the background copy, okay, I am going to try and clip it to this image here. And what it will do is it will clip to this mask. So you now see that that is too dark. But at the same time, with the bright light behind them, Is it a nice contrast? So now we can go in and we can go, right, let's see what screen looked like. Too light, lighten. Colour burn, way too dark. Multiply is the one that I quite liked for that. I thought that might work because of these tones. But again, it's still too dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn down the opacity slightly. And say it's around about there for this. Does that work? That's given us a kind of starting point for this. The next thing that you can do to kind of finalise this, now you do see it's not perfect and he's been added in, but it looks a lot better than what we originally started with. And I'll put these in a group to show you. We are not going to go in and deal with the smart object in this video. It's just to prepare you for the other videos. So I could go in here and I can also create a mask in this. So it's a hide all reveal all mask. But if there's certain areas where I want light to come down within this image, I can take the brush and I can make sure it's, let's go for that size. Now I'm doing this with the mouse, so it's not going to be perfect. So there he looks okay in there. But perhaps we want a wee bit of light coming back in. Now if I turn that off, you can see how bright he is. But perhaps we want light just spilling on. So I'm going to leave it brush normal mode and opacity, but remember you can also paint with different blending modes. You would have to go through them to find out what one suits your image. If I go to screen, for example, and that's at 100%, you see that there's hardly anything happening here. Within that, the brush and screen, nothing's happening. Whereas if I go to multiply, see? So we can add a tiny bit of light. Do you see that? So it depends. So that's you actually painting with a brush set to a certain mode as well. I'm going to step that back, Control and Z. Right, if you're doing this, it's a million times easier with a pen and a tablet. But if you're doing this, don't paint onto the person. Paint there. Now, do you see the light just affecting it and no more? Don't let the brush edge go onto it, and I'll show you why in a second, but don't let you may have to decrease the brush size and everything in certain points, but don't let the brush edge go onto it, because we've got a feather extending out from that edge, and once you get to learn roughly, and it is just be, see that might not even have been right there, I'm going to try, that's down there. Now you're going to be doing this and painting just to see where you think the light would be affected the most. Remember, any undercuts or anything, it probably wouldn't. But you've always got reflected light. Like in there, I'm not going to touch. So this isn't going to be a finished image. You're just going to see the process of getting there. And let's go there. And you can see that I'm not touching this. What happens is, I'm going to paint here. So if I put one spot there, watch how much this extends out each time I click it. That's the feather that's causing that effect, right? And now I have to make the brush bigger to get further, but do you see it's extending out and it's softening from where the end of the brush is out to about there. So that's the kind of thing you have to watch. I'm going to step that back just so that I don't go too far. See? So that's it. I'll go back into my mask, make sure I'm on my mask and go for the brush. Now, the brush is too big. And you can see there's wee mistakes here. This is because, this is the good thing where it's been a mask. I can go back in and sort these and I can take out any of these wee edges. So I'm just going to let you see that. I'm not going to finish this image. Hopefully you get the idea from there. I would then zoom in and let you see bits of his shoulder are missing there. I'd go into this mask here. I'd change my brush back to normal. Remember to do that or you'll wonder why things aren't happening. I'd take it down in size with the square brackets, and mine have just frozen. There, I'll take it off of normal, click there, and I'll take the square brackets down, and then I would paint it back in. So that's where masks come in handy, because you can see there's wee bits of the image missing. Now, if you were ever to do this and print this, it would show up. That's why it's always a good idea to leave masks there and then go in and sort them later. I'm going to zoom out. Control 0. So does it look great? No, it's not perfect, but at the same time, it shows you a really quick way. I need to change my brush to multiply now, because I found that multiply worked in this layer. And then I can go in and paint roughly here. And it helps if I'm on the right brush. I should be in black, so this will start showing up now. And it is very, very slightly, but it's showing up. See that? We're just getting that slight accent. Now, the rest of the videos, they're going to show you how to increase this accent and other ways of doing it. So it's not a finished image. It's just the processes involved to get it. And you haven't colour graded this image in any form at all. You've just actually used an average blur to apply the tint to it. If I zoom back, Control and 0, I can go into this layer. Say I think he is too dark there, but actually I think he's quite balanced. But if I thought he was too dark, watch this. If I click in here on the actual smart object thumbnail, watch. That happens and it boots up Camera Raw. So you're going to see the difference here. And I'm going to get into the basics of Camera Raw, and I'm just going to up the exposure slightly. Just that's all I'm going to do here. So there, it's up there, and click OK. Watch. See I'm changing and getting lighter. You've got total control of your image if you bring it in as a smart object, or if you feel that you need to adjust stuff later to save you jumping back and forward. Now, the bottom of his heel here as well, I'm going to zoom in and just point this out. I'm not going to do it, but in here, that should be darker because it's the same light that's projecting up. So basically what I would do there is I would put a layer above. I'll just click that. I'd put a layer above here. Personally, I would use the pen tool to do it and draw around that, but then I would just choose a colour. I'm just going to do this very, very quickly. I'm going to choose a colour that would work. So we've got a lot of green going on. We've got a lot of green in the shadows now. So let's just take that. And I would paint that out. It looks terrible. I'm just showing you the quick way. And then I would drop the opacity of this quite a bit, just so as that we have a definite shadow. And in there, closer connection to the ground, a second one. And I'm just going to put a band across this. And then I'm going to drop the opacity. Right? And that green is actually not dark enough. It's too green in the shadows there. How I would adjust that? Control and L, or Command and L, brings up the levels. And I'm just going to make it a wee bit darker. Right? It still doesn't look perfect. You would take your time doing it. Quite happy with that. I'm going to combine both of them together, Control or Command E, and then just for speed, I'm going to erase them. I would always mask though, but this is just for speed of the video. Control 0, so that looks a bit better. If I want to have more control over it, I can bring it, I can take it right down. So you see the difference by using the opacity slider. Right, and that's it. In here, we won't finish this image, I'll just tell you what you would do. In here, some of these artifacts here were on a mask. Some of these would actually cover. You don't get that kind of straight edges walking on ground. So if I get into the brush here and it's a black brush, I'm going to take it down in size. You would, not in all cases, and I would do it with reference photos, you would go in and perhaps take out stuff, or maybe even copy stuff up. Now you can see I'm getting a really soft edge here and it's going to look terrible. That just looks as if it's in there. So it's not going to work with that one. I would probably go into my background layer, random, using the lasso tool, and I would probably just draw a random shape like that. I'm going to use that wee bit there just so you can see it. Right, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to copy that up. Control and C, Control J, sorry. And I've now got a copy of that. I can take it up here, and this is going to let you see the colour difference. So if I turn that off, you're not seeing anything. Did I manage to lift the copy up? I did. So I would then perhaps use some of this just to cover it and give it the impression that he's actually walked over it. So I'm going to zoom out. That's us. That's the quickest way, probably about 20 minutes. This has been running, maybe even further, but that's the quickest way to bring the image together. To finalise your image is then when you go Shift, Control, Alt and E. That's all these layers flattened into the same image. Go into Wind Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and then make the adjustments as you see fit. Highlights, maybe bring the highlights up, take them down. We're not pushing them because we're like that, because that's just too easy to do and it does look natural. We're just trying to blend them so that they look okay. Highlights, I maybe even bring back a bit. So you're just trying to balance out the full image. Don't push, don't over exaggerate these edits because they end up looking terrible. There may be some points where you can drop the shadows as far back as that. But as soon as you start doing this and then trying to balance out colours and everything, it just looks absolutely terrible. We're not looking to do that with these. We're trying to keep it as a learning process and how to create the effect. So I'm going to leave it at that. There's a slight difference, but not much. See, it just changed. So what we originally had was that, and I've just made a